Everybody, I'd like to welcome you all to this session. My name is Obi Udano. I'm Senior Business Development Manager for Age Check Certification Scheme, and we're convening to explore the dynamic landscape of age assurance technology. And today, our focus will be on new approved emerging methods of age assurance. Obviously, as our digital world continues to evolve at a rapid pace, ensuring the integrity and effectiveness of age assurance systems is paramount. From traditional methods to cutting edge innovations, the spectrum of age verification techniques are vast and diverse. So in this session, we've gathered a panel of experts representing the breadth and perspectives from the industry pioneers to experts in regulation to delve into latest advancements, regulatory considerations, and practical implications of age assurance methods. The first panelist I'd like to introduce is Asfar Adib. He's a doctoral researcher at Montreal University in Canada. Asfar is a PhD candidate in electrical and computer engineering and is a public scholar at Concordia University in Montreal. His research focuses on anonymous age verification systems, and Asfar has a crucial role in the ongoing development of age verification standards in Canada. The second panelist is Linda Gazal. She's head of regulatory and public affairs at Verify My here in the United Kingdom. Lina is a strategy and policy professional with 13 years plus experience in public and private sector, working on media, online regulation, and is skilled in building policy initiatives and partnerships and driving large-scale multi-territory projects. She's interested in helping to shape regulation that will allow technology serve people and society in a better way. You're welcome, Lina. And finally, we have Deepak Tiwari. He's the CEO of Privately SA in Switzerland. He comes with a wealth of experience in privacy and cybersecurity. Deepak brings invaluable insights to the table, offering unique perspectives on the intersection of age assurance and data protection. Privately's age assurance and online safety technology helps, Privately's age assurance and online safety technology helps retailers, app developers, gaming companies, web platforms, and device manufacturers deliver age-appropriate and safe user experiences. Deepak, you're welcome. So the first question, I'll start with Lina and Deepak, is what are the primary ethical considerations surrounding emerging age verification technologies, particularly those that utilize advanced biometrics or AI-driven methods? How do you propose balancing the need for privacy and security with the necessity for verifying age accurately? Lina, can you start?
And we dive straight in. Thank you. So I think that what's important when we think about innovation and new methods is really to build the new methods with lots of different consideration in mind from the start. And so what we do as at Verify My is that we really we have innovation at heart. And so when we are thinking about developing new methods, the first thing that we think also, and that's something that has been discussed over the last couple of days, is choice, and thinking about that, and also thinking about proportionality, because obviously you don't need necessarily the same methods for different risks that you can have. And so the idea is really to approach this with that in mind, and to think about what we can offer based on what are the users' needs, and that's how we went about our email address method. But what was important as well is build it with privacy in mind, of course, but also go through the certification from the start. And that's also why it was very important for us to be certified through the age certification scheme to the highest level, and also working very closely with regulators to engage with them and educate them about what we do, how we do it, why we do it that way, what works, what doesn't work. And that's why we were also very happy to be listed in the new ICO updated opinion in January as a viable method. And so I think that's also very important in terms of like collaboration and making sure that we have everyone around the table and we work towards the same goal and kind of like take all of these considerations in mind.
My take on the ethics, there are a couple of dimensions we have to explore. Whenever we develop new technologies, like Obi mentioned, especially stuff like the ones we develop it privately, which are essentially based on biometrics, we might call it, it's not special category data, that's another debate. But yeah, we are assessing someone's face or someone's voice. There are ethical considerations about it. What's the data minimization principle behind it? And in our case, I'm happy to say that from the day one, we've implemented a mechanism to do all data processing on device, which means to say I can assess the subject for age based on their voice or on their face, but it will be done on their device. No data moves out of the device. That's a detail of implementation, but the bigger principle here is data minimization and what kind of data sets are available to train the systems. I think as we talk to multiple people and multiple people in the industry, there are some almost a guilt about where you sourced your data from. Is that, but there has to be transparency about where the data came from, and which is where not all age systems are equal. Let me put it this way. A system which has been publicly evaluated by regulators, by an accreditation body, that's one way of bringing transparency and thereby preserving ethics and by making sure that data has been procured in a sane way, it is being used in a minimized fashion. So I think oversight as an industry is a primary way to see that ethics are maintained. I think one thing we have to ask ourselves as an industry is where do we draw the line on on the profiling that might be possible. We've seen from the Americas, we've seen what's coming out of the US. A big pushback to many of these technologies is because there is an inherent belief among a lot of people that these technologies might be used as surveillance technologies. So this question about ethics and about some transparency about who's handling this data how, it's one of the most critical questions to be answered for the industry, the age verification industry, if we want to move forward. I think I've posed more questions than answers, but sorry about that.
Thank you, Lina. Thank you, Deepak. My second question, I would like to throw it to Afiz. We were having a conversation just before the session started on the work you're doing in your research. And it's that some argue that the traditional age verification methods, such as ID checks, are becoming outdated in the digital age. How do you envision the future of age verification evolving beyond the conventional methods? And what are the potential risks and benefits associated with these approaches?
Thank you, Obi. Good afternoon, all. So it's a very interesting question, and maybe I can just talk about some survey we did last spring. So as Obi was mentioning, for my PhD, I'm working with heartbeat-based age verification. So the story is like when we are young, the heart beats fast, and as we grow older, it starts beating slow. So we are just using this property to develop some age verification mechanism. And apart from the technical research, last spring we did FGD, focus group discussion among around 50 people to ask that, do you like this thing and how would you feel about that? So as Obi was asking that, how about like the proposing the benefits and establishing the technology? So some people do agree that yes, I don't want to share my ID card, or I don't want to take a selfie. So better I can use this kind of things, or maybe what Deepak and Lina is working on, using voice or using some other stuff. But at the same time, we do have people who say that, no, why should I trust you? What you are going to do with my heart signal? I'm happy to share my ID card. I'm happy to share traditional methods. So I assume it really depends on the context. Another interesting observation was, my perception was that people who are relatively younger, they are more interested with this kind of technology. But I was wrong, because I saw young people like me. I am not that young, but maybe I'm younger than me. That they said, no, I'm skeptical. What you're going to do with my heart signal is my sensitive health information, and they are right. At the same time, we saw senior people who said, okay, when I want to go to my bank, I have to give my password 2 or 3 times, or I have to scan my ID. So I don't need to do this if I use your technology. So I'm happy with that. So what I understood is really difficult to draw a hard line. It depends on the context. It depends on people's perception. And there we all have a role to play. The regulator, the government, all of us who are here today. So we need to take the right message, and we need to see how it moves on. So sorry, Abhi, there is no yes or no answer to your question, but it depends. So yeah.
Thank you, Afiz. And Lina, I'd like you to answer this question. So as Afiz said, there's this tension or this concern when it comes to these new technologies that are out there. And, you know, there's that, I would say, that tension between innovation and regulation, especially in industries like age verification, where safeguarding minors is paramount. How can innovators like Deepak, Afiz, work with standards to ensure that emerging approaches to age verification are both effective and compliant with existing laws and standards?
Thank you. So I think that today we've heard a lot from regulators, and today was about driving improvements. And I think that this tension between innovation, standards, it's really important. And I mean, I've come from the regulator, so I used to work for Ofcom, and I've worked also at Meta, so I've seen it from a big tech platform. And now working for an age assurance provider, I can definitely see that we all come to it from a different perspective. And so, and innovation will always be faster than regulation trying to keep up. But that's why I was going to say days like today, but weeks like this week is very important to bring everyone around the table. And hopefully will not only be that week, we will keep having those conversations, because I think that there will always be innovation. And I was very happy to hear a number of regulators talk about we will be tech neutral and we will make sure that we not stifle innovation, because I think that if we look back a couple of years ago, we weren't where we are now in terms of like the technology that we're developing, the effectiveness of the technology, the accuracy, and so on. So I think that there will always be a potential tension, but I think that there's a gap that can be closed, and there's a lot of like education, awareness to be developed from the start, and try to bring everyone in from the start to make sure that we can keep up with the way things are evolving. And we actually see it in a slightly different way with the EU AI Act, where they've been trying to actually set some of the key principles, and then also leave it to kind of like the industry to develop standards, to develop a number of things that can be a bit more flexible, so that as technology is developing, we can also make sure that things can keep up with that.
Thank you, Lina. And Deepak, from our work we do for you at ACCS, we know you're doing a lot of cutting edge stuff, voice age estimation, and also just age estimation. What role do you see emerging technologies like blockchain this time and decentralized identity solutions playing in the future of age verification? And how might these technologies address concerns related to data privacy and security, while also providing reliable age verification mechanisms?
Obi, to be very fair and honest, I am no expert in blockchain. I might be one of the few, but I know that self-sovereign identity and decentralized, that definitely is a promise that the industry is moving towards to address the big problem and the elephant in the room about data privacy. Who's keeping all the data? What sort of profiling is possible? What sort of surveillance mechanisms are possible because of collections of data? So obviously, as we've now over the last day and a half, we've talked to a number of ID providers. It seems that it's a uniform it's a uniform movement towards some sort of decentralized identity. So that's a no-brainer. It's going to move in that direction, and that's going to fix, hopefully, some of the problems about decentralized, some of the data collection problems. I'm not 100% sure if that is a silver bullet, though. So there might be there'll be some clever people who will find some way around, and you will still see that some people who are claiming it in some way, but that's definitely a step in the right direction. It's because of the multiplicity of technologies, it also means that there will be different space at which different industry blocks move. So in Web 3.0 might be a completely different experience to imagine. And that's kind of where it might be a hook into the video I wanted to show today. Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. So essentially, we developed a proof of concept last year for one of the large platforms where where voice could be used as a trigger to understand whether the user was a minor or not. And this is it's based. The technology was completely integrated on the VR headset, and as the child or the adult speaks, the experience on the VR headset evolves accordingly. So it was an example of a data preserving. It's obviously cutting edge. There's no other equivalent to it. This is a system, thanks to it. It also touches a little bit on the previous question, because before we said it's a great system, we got it evaluated independently by ACCS. They gave us, thanks to the client asked for an evaluation, we got an evaluation level 1. So the technology on voice today is good enough to differentiate someone under 16, let's say, and over 25. It doesn't work very well in the middle because people's voices evolve very much between 16, let's say 16 to 25. But so it is not a silver bullet for all use cases, but it can tell, for example, if there's a young person on the Oculus. And you'll have to bear with us for a minute, but it's
Privately voice analytics demo. Me as an adult, I have bought a VR headset and I'm playing around the metaverse. So the system detects my voice and says this is an adult. In this chart, here is some information that is extracted from my voice. The door on the left-hand side is opened just for me, and let's see what's inside.
So it's basically age-appropriate advertising. It's an adult.
So you can see some age-appropriate advertisements. Now, here's another example of a kid speaking.
Bullying is when a person hurts another person by saying mean words or using actions to physically hurt someone else. There are words for these types of bullying: emotion bullying, physical bullying, and cyberbullying. Did you know 1 out of 10 students?
The door on the right-hand side is opened, and now we expect to see some kid-related content.
It changed the experience based on the understanding.
So you can imagine if a family has a headset to share, a kid might be using it, and
the experience was coarse-grained, you could see, but the idea to communicate here was that it's when the system can dynamically say in real time whether the user is an adult or a child, and can change, so it can be age-appropriate advertising. Now, the same thing can be extended to many other segments. So this was an example of a technology which exists alone, but also in conjunction with face. So if you can imagine, we also combine a facial and voice-based estimation. We call it multimodal. And in that case, it provides a much higher assurance, especially in this new and new age, where you have deepfake attacks. So all of these are new dimensions and new technologies which are coming in. You will see deployed more and more and more. This voice, the adult industry seems to like it a little bit, because in some geographies, people will rather speak a line and have access to an adult site rather than present a face or an ID or something. So this is a viable alternative for some industries. So
Thank you, Deepak. And my next question goes to Afiz. In many cases, age verification is not only about confirming an individual's age, but also about protecting them from harmful content or activities. How can emerging approaches to age verification be designed to not only verify age, but also to promote safer online experiences for users of all ages? Just like
Yeah, thank you. So I can just add with Deepak that age verification is not the silver bullet, it's not the ultimate solution, it's a part of the solution. And that's what we all have discussed all through this summit. The bigger question is the online safety for kids and for everyone. And coming to this question, I guess it starts right from when we design our technologies. So often maybe we are working a little bit silo, we are developing the technologies, but we need to really consider the other aspects. So what can be the possible user experience? So obviously, when we are designing a technology in a particular context, in a particular part of the world, we might focus on that context, which is okay. But if we really take it to a global level, then we need to think about the other people, like how it can adapt in a diverse context. For instance, something which we are making in North America, maybe I can talk about my research about the heartbeat-based age verification. So I have data of people from that particular context, from a particular demography, but I really need to get a diverse data set. So firstly, diversity is very important, not just in terms of development, but also in terms of data and also in terms of usability. And then comes all these questions like, is this really going to be accepted by people? So having some user experience test and having some usability, this can really help. And at the end, I guess this collaboration really helps. We need to talk more with each other and we can learn from each other. So maybe it's a continuous journey, but we need to keep trying.
Lena, would you mind contributing to that question too?
Thank you. So yeah, I think it's definitely not only about verifying the age, but also about the protection and the experience that comes with it. And so I think that and when we talk, there's a lot of we can talk about age assurance, we can talk about age verification, but I think that what's important to stress is that it's not necessarily about knowing who the person or who the child is, but estimating his age and then being able to serve him with what is appropriate for their age. And again, I might sound like a broken record, but I think that it's something that we all have a sort of responsibility in, and obviously the age assurance provider is one piece of this. The kind of the services and the platform have their own responsibility into it. There's a lot of discussions about where should that happen. Is it at the services level, at the device level? And I think that, again, you both mentioned that, but there's no one size fits all solution. And so I really think that, and otherwise we wouldn't be here for 5 days. So it's really a testament of how complex the issue is. And that's why when we look at age and thinking about how that should work, it's not only about getting a number, right? It's also about what is it that we're trying to achieve, who is it that we're trying to protect, and how we want to go about it.
So while I agree with my fellow panelists, there's a level of abstraction that I'd like to venture here. Look, if we put ourselves 5 years from now, I think as an industry, as the internet evolves, I can see a future where the internet is age aware. So we are grappling with the standards right now. We know what's the data privacy like, but think of it in 5 years, all the Wild West which has been happening for the last 20 years, where an 8-year-old could just click a button and be in the hardcore porn site. That'll all go away. So whatever the differences we have right now, that'll go away. And the wedge into all of this is actually age assurance. So while it is not a silver bullet, but it is, to me, it's a crucial part of the puzzle to get the entire industry aligned to get into that direction. So we're very privileged to be here forming a part of the future. And while we might have our differences in approaches and technologies and so on and so forth, but we are all working towards those next 5 years, where I think a lot of these online safety issues will become history, because the machine itself, the camera itself, is aware as soon as it sees a child. And it sounds a little bit dystopic, but in some ways it does provide it's the same thing about the playground and the jungle. So you wouldn't let your little kid in the jungle, yeah, and the playground is there's a surveillance. So all of those things will add up pretty soon. So I am actually quite optimistic about where this is going, even if it looks a little bit cloudy in Manchester tonight.
Thank you. And just a final one from me here before I open up questions for the audience. And this is for three of you. As innovators, as you guys are, how do you address the potential biases and limitations inherent in automated age verification systems, particularly those based on machine learning algorithms? What steps can be taken to ensure that these systems are fair, transparent, and accountable in their decision-making process? So I'll start with you, Hafiz.
Yeah, so again, data is the key. Having more data, testing with diverse data, that really helps. So yeah, that's the simple answer from me.
Bias is a really important one, and again, I think that it depends on the use case. It depends on the risk level, but I think that when the bias was actually what we had in mind when we developed the email address method, because with email, like almost everyone has an email address, and there are no bias based on gender or ethnicity or things like that. So that's something that we had in mind when we developed that method. But I think that as we innovate, as we're thinking about method, and you mentioned that at the beginning, like all those ethical considerations are important to take into account from the start, and obviously making sure that you have an evidence-based approach, that you have testing, that you have data is really important in that respect.
Thank you. So I'm going to I'm going to give you an engineering answer. There's a very interesting set of technologies. They're called privacy enhancing technologies. One of them, which holds the most promise as far as we have seen, is called federated learning. What it means is that I can basically train on your data on your device without taking your data at all from your device. And it's quite magical. And you've seen, most of you who use Apple have seen that sometimes the Apple keyboard learns what names have you been typing and prompts you next time you type. That's because the keyboard learned. In a similar way, age systems, biometric systems, implementing this next generation learning systems. For example, if you are able to combine face and voice into one check, if for example, the model on the face says, yeah, this person is decidedly 26, but the voice model is saying, well, I thought it was an 18-year-old voice. Right there in that moment is a potential to train one from the other. And it's not a silver bullet like not many are, but there are interesting technologies which are bridging that gap, because let's accept it, all systems are biased today. And anyone who says they aren't is not being entirely truthful. We will move in that direction, but the technology is moving so fast that, again, I see that most systems around will get over this bias problem sooner rather than later. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all. And I just wanted to add that, and because of the bias, that's one of the things that we at Age Check Certification Scheme are very concerned about. And that's why we developed the inherent bias for both skin tone and gender, because we understand these are concerns both from a facial recognition standpoint and age estimation standpoint. And we encourage our clients to also include this testing when they come for their certification. So I would now open this to the audience.
Thank you.
Hello. Oh, sorry, I can't see the video. I'll stop.
So Jutta Kroll from the German Digital Opportunities Foundation. I'm not sure about the time frame of 5 years that we have solved the problem, but I really like your example from the playground. And I would like to take that a little bit further. In the real world playground, I think in Germany, we even have signs trying to make sure that no bad actors enter a playground where children are playing, and parents and supervisors are there to have a look that no drug dealer, for example, enters the playground. And what do you think, could age assurance also be deployed to make sure that the digital playgrounds for children are safe from bad actors who might want to enter a digital playground to groom children?
Can I venture an answer? Look, Jutta, thank you for your question. I don't think there is an objective answer to that. And the reason I feel is, you see, these mechanisms exist today. So today you can actually figure out one way or the other, and at least the big platforms can, that there is an adult and there's a child. And I know a few games are already implementing those policies, where if you're under 10 or something, you cannot mingle with, much older people. The gaming industry has a pushback on that a little bit. They say a lot of what young people learn on the game is interacting with the older people. Where does one draw the line? Is that a policy line? Is that an age assurance line? So I don't think it's a technical question. Technically we can, but should we? And that's a question of policy. But there will be spaces, there will be dedicated safe spaces for younger people, and maybe dedicated spaces for adult people as better, because some people complain that they don't want younger people in that room because they get they get into trouble or whatever that might be the case. So I think that the age assurance is a tool like anything else. It provides you with the possibility to do one thing versus the other. Then on top of that, it'll be policies, it'll be governmental, it'll be regulations, etc., which can guide us onto what's the most optimal experience. And I think it will be different. For example, if you're in an educational setting, vis-a-vis you're in a in the metaverse, in a place where you could have all sorts of experiences. So the answer is it depends, I think.
Sorry, and just to add to that, I think that definitely the age assurance is one piece and one tool in the big puzzle. But I think that your question touches upon content moderation as well, in terms of like and the kind of like age appropriate experience. And once you know what age, then what is it in terms of experience that you serve to that user, in terms of like who he's interacting with, what content he can see, and so on. So, and potentially those can be from the same provider, or the services can decide to use different type of tools. So I think that it definitely depends on the risk assessment and then the kind of like age appropriate experience that you want to deliver.
I believe we have Gilad online that wants a question.
Yes, hi, thank you very much. I have a question for the panel members from Privately and Verify My. I wanted to know if you could tell us, if you could break down your clients in regard to how much of them are doing, how much of your clients are doing age gating for just entry to a site versus as you've described, doing it for altering the nature of the content that they're served once they're inside the site?
Judah, thank you for your question. I think it's a little bit dependent on the industry. So if we look at the adult industry, for example, where at the moment we don't have active clients, but we did, they were using it for gating, of course, as you can imagine. If we think about the game, when I say gaming, I mean video gaming industry. In that industry, it is actually meant to craft the whole user experience for the user. So it depends on the industry. And then, of course, when we use it in retail, it's not voice in retail, as you can imagine. No one would use voice in retail, but faces on retail. That's essentially to exclude or include, right? So if you're a young person asking for a bottle of beer, they'll ask you for an ID based on the technology flagging, well, that's above 18 or under 18 or above 25, whatever the number might be there. So depending on the industry and the use case, it could be an inclusion. It could be a, I would say more or less, it's, I can't venture a number, but I think it's through, it has to be thought about in terms of the industry.
Yeah, I think for Verify My, it's kind of a similar answer. I think it definitely depends on the industry, but also based on the industry. So it can also differ in terms of like which methods you would use, depending on what is it that you're trying to achieve. So some clients could have different types of methods available, and based on what they are trying to do or how frictionless they would want to go, they would go with one or the other.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak and Lena. Any more questions? Okay.
I have a follow-up. I'm happy to keep throwing questions.
Go ahead, please.
So, Lena, you mentioned the magic. You mentioned the F word, friction, which I'm surprised has not come up more at this conference. And in my own work, I have found that it is the absolute most important pacing item in the development of this industry, is the deep, terrible fear of and rejection of friction by sites who see it as immediately leading to drop off and loss of engagement. And so I just wanted to know if you could add some color to that conversation. And do you see the same thing? And how is the question of friction impacting the services that you're trying to put in the marketplace?
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's definitely a great question, and something that we're thinking a lot about, and that is also important to discuss collaboratively, because I think that it's again, I think that there are split responsibilities in terms of like who is giving the kind of like principle-based approach, who is saying what is acceptable in which cases. So I think that that's for the kind of like regulator to kind of like give the kind of like framework in which we should operate. And then, yes, definitely in terms of like how you engage with clients and how you talk to them about the different methods is again really about what is it that they are trying to achieve, what is their risk level as well, and I think there's also a dimension around we always try to oppose kind of like entry or like friction versus like drop off, but the truth is it's not. If you enter something and you don't get the kind of like experience that you want, it's also not in favor of the service. So there's also a case of like, yes, it can get as you get into a risk level that's higher, there can be more friction, but it also depends on what is it that you're trying to achieve. And that's why I'm coming back to what I was telling like at the beginning, in terms of like making sure that you have the choice to kind of like decide which method is more appropriate. And I mentioned frictionless with email because it's really something that can go actually in the background without the user even knowing that this is going on. But I think definitely in terms of like the user experience, the platform experience, it depends what is it that we're trying to achieve.
Chirag, you actually put your hand on a bleeding vein, is to say. So yes, friction is one of the main pain points of this industry, and I think it would be in a much bigger industry if that was not a consideration. However, I think, just like Lena said, there are design choices being made by different platforms, by ourselves as well, helping the platforms. For example, to bake age assurance into to almost make it invisible. So without divulging too much, I can tell you the next generation of age checks are going to be invisible because it is your camera which becomes age aware. Of course, you will have, when you sign in for the T's and C's, you agree that your age will be checked, but then it doesn't add any friction. So I wouldn't say it doesn't add any friction, but it might be baked. Age checks might become recurrent. They might be working in the background and they might be part of the process. So that's why the industry is going towards. It's still some, those of you who try to open a bank account online would know, open your mouth, rotate your head, do a backflip, etc. So, and it's very cumbersome, but I can assure you that it's going to disappear and be very, very seamless. So products that you will see coming out in the next 3 to 6 months, you will see that the age gates become more and more in the background.
Thank you, Lena and Deepak. Do we have any more questions? All right.
Hi guys, obviously you know who I am. I'm Tony Allen from Age Check Certification Scheme. I think one of the things I wanted to ask in this particular group is, as you develop the cutting edge of new technologies and new approaches, and you come to like the people like us to test and assess that, what challenges do you face in us actually working out how to test that? And, what the practical implications are for independent third-party testing and analysis of your various systems and ideas that you come up with?
Thanks, Tony. It's a great question. So the very first thing is that what should be my benchmark when I'm working with a new technology? Should I follow the existing benchmark, or we should develop a new benchmark? So that's the first thing. Second thing is about the infrastructure, like how do we have a sufficient hardware or technical support? Because often when we're working in academia, things work well in our lab settings, but real life is different. So we need to have sufficient collaboration. And the other part is obviously the regulatory aspect. For instance, when I do my data collection, I have to go through a lengthy ethical approval, because honestly, it's hard to convince the people that, okay, this is a new thing, there is no danger. People can just put their hands on the smartwatch and give their heartbeat data. So I think it's natural with the new technology, but these are the few things that we obviously have to cater. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a really important question, Tony, because I mean, I'm passionate about innovation. I've worked for a decade now thinking about how technology can help support young children, society, and so on. But there's, to your point about like what's the benchmark and how it works, and I've seen it. I've been a few months with Verify My, and I'm amazed by how our tech team is working, thinking, building, innovating. So that's amazing, and that's why I'm also very grateful that you exist and that we can engage and talk about this and think about how we can build together something where there's trust, because I think that trust is very key in this market. And again, like how you can bring different people and different perspective around the table, and talk about what is the kind of like common denominator and what we could all live with. But it's not like it will never be over. Like we will never say done, work done, we can all go home now. I think it will be a continuous discussion and engagement in terms of like identifying what works, what doesn't, what's the acceptable level, and that's why we need like lots of people in the room to make sure that all perspectives are taken into account.
Thank you. Well, I can give a very specific example with yourselves. We came out with a voice-based age estimation. There were no existing examples of how it can be evaluated. We sat down actually with a client, and the client guided us what they wanted to see. And thanks to Tony and his team, they actually built the specification from scratch. So because in the end, I think it's really important when you go to a client to be able to say that your system works and it has been independently evaluated. So anyone who's developing a new innovation technology, besides your own claims, there has to be a neutral third party that has evaluated that. And then thanks to your agility in your organization, but also thanks to some of the clients. So I think the point I'm trying to make is a lot of times we can be client-led because they know exactly their use case, like they did in this case. And in the next case, when they would say, okay, it's going to be in a retail shop in this setting, in this lighting, and then we make those, we create a test spec. You create a test spec. We work with that test spec, and then we live up to that spec. So in that sense, I haven't been very, I can't say that I've been very disappointed, at least with the way we've worked together. Although I have another counter example to give you. In another country in Europe, we are Swiss-based, so we went to another country and we said, look, we want to get this age system tested for deployment in, Germany, right? So we went somewhere and they said, okay, here is please pay us 70 grand first to do a study on how we will come out with a testing solution. And then we will tell you what we'll charge you for a testing solution. So, so both kinds of problems exist. So in our case, we were lucky, you worked with us. We've got something that we've been able to prove out. So sorry, too much.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. So I'll just like to thank Asfar, Lena, and Deepak for shedding more light on how these new approaches are shaping the landscape for age verification, promoting trust, security, and inclusivity in this digital age. That's all we have for today.